It had been a peaceful time for Albion once more, after Lord Lucien's plan of destruction had been laid to waste, thanks to the hero of skill for stopping his madness near the end. I had lost my only loved one to Lucien's plans, and I fought on for her every single day, and I fought for the people of Albion who needed a hero in their time of need. I had to be strong for them, and I had to be the hero they needed. No matter what now. About several years had passed after Lucien's death, when I had begun to reopen myself to the familiar villages that surrounded me every day. I took on the occasional quest here and there to always practice my skills, but it had seemed all of the adventure was drained from my life. I felt as if I had no other purpose here, yet Teresa had showed me otherwise with a vision. I would become a monarch in my later years and have a life-changing child, which was definitely a lot of pressure on me, but it was my destiny as a hero. I had recently moved to Oakfield to keep away from the hustle and bustle of the town life, because I had always preferred the peace and serenity of the small village. Since I had completed the Golden Oak ritual with Hammer, the town had been prosperous and overflowing with healthy crops and soil. This day I had decided to go and visit Bowerstow Market and take a little shopping break. My wonderful husky dog Farin had traveled with me as always, and he had been his old self since I resurrected him days after he died. I would never know what would happen to me if he weren't at my side. He barked happily once we had jumped out of the carriage and headed to market, and I stretched my limbs and cracked my knuckles.
Yes, boy, we'll go shopping. I'll get you some jerky.
I smiled at him. Many of the villagers had gathered around me once I stepped foot near the clock tower, and some of them had preferred if I never came back, thanks to my selfish decision in the Spire. I had chatted with many and tried to give them my side of the story, but there were some minds that were of no use to change. So I continued to shop as I talked with a few people, and after a while, I couldn't wait to be rid of them. I loved the people of Albion, since they supported me as much as they could, but there was only so much a person could handle after so long. I felt I had been growing bitter, which is what I tried to fix by spending more time with as many people as I could. I had waved to a friend of mine as I was on my way to a stall, until I ran into a tall figure on accident. I fell backwards and dropped my basket of foods, and I instantly shook my head and winced.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You should really watch where you're going.
A familiar male's voice rudely commented.
I'm sorry,
I looked up. And there he stood.
Oh, Reaver, I didn't see you there.
This man had sacrificed me twice, but I had come back stronger after each time, and yet my stomach tingled whenever I saw him.
Wait. Aren't you the little hero? Sophie, was it?
He asked smoothly, his anger now fully vanished.
You look different.
It's the hair.
I answered.
Sorry if I ruined your coat.
I couldn't help but apologize to the man who could behead me with one swift movement. His eyes and expression had changed completely, then he had adorned a devious grin.
It may have been my fault, which I doubt, but it is a possibility. Say, how about we show how much we're sorry to one another, and you come to dinner tonight at my mansion? I have to pay a visit to the fool who bought it. I must be true to my letter.
Oh, about that. I was the one who bought it back.
I piped up.
I did it so no one else could claim it and destroy it, since I knew you'd be back.
I dug through my satchel that hung at my side and handed him the deed to the Bloodstone Mansion. He snatched it from my hand and smiled.
Well, I suppose a thanks is in order for you. The mansion at 7 o'clock. Tatty bye.
He had left in a bit of a rush and waved me off, and he walked through the town square and headed toward Old Town. In my mind, he was a no-good son of a hob, a dirty rogue of a man. But there was something about him, that just kept drawing me to him. It had disgusted me that I couldn't find another man to love, one who was kind at heart, but it was my own fault in the end. And I had to accept that Reaver would never love another living soul but his own. But no matter what I thought, my heart always fluttered when around him. Farron let out a loud bark and tugged at the scarf that decorated my belt.
What is it, boy?
He nuzzled the scarf with his nose.
Oh, I've nothing to wear for dinner. I'm sure he'd want me to look my best.
I stood there for a moment, then I had picked up the food from the ground and placed it all back in the basket. If I wanted to try and tempt Reaver into being with me, I couldn't parade around in my everyday blood-stained adventuring clothes. I had finished up the food shopping for the house and took the carriage back home, where I had begun to frantically prepare for my evening. I had decided to go to my friend Belle's house, to see if she could help me with my dilemma. I walked across the way and knocked on her door, and after a moment, the door slowly opened.
Who is it? Ah, Sophitia! Good to see you again, my dear. How can I help you?
She smiled, and flung her long black hair from her eyes.
Hello, Belle. It's a pleasure to see you too. I was wondering if I could ask you for a favor.
Sure, of course. Just come right in, dearie.
She smiled happily, and opened the door wider to let me in.
I had become worried when I didn't see you around for a few days.
Ah, yes, I had to do a bit of traveling to get a few things. So...
I breathed.
I'd say you and I are roughly the same build, so I was wondering if I could borrow a nice dress, for a date?
I asked.
A date? Oh, finally! I thought you'd never find a nice young man.
She joked.
I'd be more than happy to help. So, who's the lucky man?
She walked into her room and began to rummage through the large oak closet, so I wandered into the doorway and stood there patiently.
I'd rather not say, Belle. I may jinx it.
I laughed.
Aw, come on, Sophie. You can tell me.
She gave me a wink and ran up to my side, then she batted her eyelashes.
Please?
I began to laugh and I just caved in.
It's Reaver.
You mean the Reaver?
She gasped.
Don't tell my husband, but I absolutely adore him. He's so handsome.
She squealed.
And he's an arseface.
I chimed in with a silly smile.
If you feel that way about him, why would you try and date him then? And does he even date people?
She asked, mainly to herself.
Well, no. But I've had feelings for him that I just decided to pursue. I want to try and show him that I can be worth it, you know? I mean, if it doesn't work out, then no harm done.
I said, and I felt my face flush and it became very warm.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best, sweetheart. Show him a great time and I'm sure he'll keep you around.
She laughed.
Well, I found the perfect dress you will wear for him, and I know he will absolutely adore it.
She pulled out a long silk gown from the closet, and it was wrapped in a large bag to protect it from any staining.
It's a silky dark blue with black trimmings, and oh, Avo, it's just stunning.
I can't wait to see how it looks on me now.
I said happily.
Thanks, Belle.
She returned to the living room with the gown in hand, and handed it to me happily.
It will look absolutely stunning on you, Sophie.
She clapped her hands and squealed with joy.
I'll compensate you for it.
I offered flatly.
Just in case anything happens to it.
I slung the gown over my shoulder and grabbed her hand in thanks. Belle smiled and rested her hand on my shoulder.
Consider it a gift, dearie. No charge. I've only worn it once anyway, so why not let you have it?
Really?
I asked, slightly surprised by her generous offer. I looked down at it and back up at her, and she nodded her head.
Thank you, Belle.
I squealed.
You're so kind to me.
I smiled and leaned in to give her a hug.
Well, before I get caught up in chat, I must see a friend before they leave town again.
Oh, not a problem.
She smiled and hugged me again.
I'll see you soon, and tell me all the details of your date.
She winked at me and laughed. We said our goodbyes again, and I left her house in a fantastic mood. I ran to my place to store the dress in the safest place I could think of, and I packed up my satchel for anything that may happen along the way. Teresa had told me last week that Hammer finally had gotten the thumbs up to compete in the Crucible, so I wanted nothing more than to go and cheer my friend on.
Farron, you stay here, boy. I'll be home soon. Alright, I'll leave you some food.
I bent down and patted his head, and I knew he understood. He barked and wagged his tail happily, so I threw him a generous piece of jerky. He greedily chewed on it as I grabbed my effects and left out the door. I had begun to trek my way towards Westcliff Camp, and when I arrived at the Crucible, Mad Dog had recognized me instantly.
Ah, the hero champion. We were wondering when you'd come back.
Just spectating this time, Mad Dog.
I smiled. He
Well, come on in. Enjoy yourself.
He opened the doors and guided me to the viewing balcony, which didn't hold as many people today as I thought would be here. There weren't as many that lined the arena than when I competed, so enough people could watch the show if they desired. I saw Hammer about to begin her first round and I knew I made it just in time. She had blasted her way through the rounds as easily as I did, and I could tell her training was definitely paying off. Her swings with her warhammer had become a lot more swift and fluid, which made her speed even quicker.
And Hammer has just tied with the hero champion's time. Well done.
Mad Dog yelled as she just finished on the large troll. She had been panting to catch her breath, then she raised her arm in victory. I had watched every single round, and I was so proud of my friend, so I snuck down to the doors of the last round room.
And Hammer is now our second Crucible champion. Here to personally congratulate her is the hero champ herself.
The crowd cheered and clapped as Hammer quickly turned around and gasped as she saw me.
Well, bless my stars. If it ain't you. How did you know I was?
Call it a blind guess?
I laughed, quite proud of my joke.
Teresa, I should have known.
She bellowed.
I am glad to see you. So what brings you all the way out here?
Hammer said happily.
To see my friend, of course. And to give you this.
I held the champion trophy up to her with a smile.
Congrats, my friend. You deserve it.
I said.
Oh, thank you.
She smiled and grabbed the trophy from my grasp.
It feels good to finally accomplish this.
Well, you deserve it. I watched all of the rounds, and all of your training has done a large amount of good for you.
She gave me a look that I hadn't seen in a long time.
Wanna go celebrate at the pub?
Hammer asked. I gave it a second to think about it, then I looked up at her.
Why not? I haven't had a drink in a long time.
I smiled and clapped my hand on Hammer's back. She laughed and we both exited the Crucible, ready to have a well-needed girls' night.